Hey y'all, welcome to Built Within Podcast, the place where we come to inspire men to be better versions of themselves by looking at themselves. I am your host, Angel, and just looking forward to pouring this episode again. And I'm grateful. And I know that often in this episode is gonna have a different approach because I know often, especially in this podcast, I say that vulnerability is a strength. And I believe that it is. But what happens when this feels like it's too much? You know? So, how do we balance being open while at the same time protecting our peace? Being vulnerable requires people to be able to set healthy boundaries. And that's what we're going to basically dive into today and discuss. So stay tuned, y'all. Hey, y'all, welcome back to the podcast. Like I said earlier, I'm so excited to be doing this episode. Like I said, it's a different approach because I'm always saying how vulnerability is a strength. And vulnerability is a strength, but it becomes a strength when you set the proper healthy boundaries. So I want to share this. I don't know if there's ever been a moment in your life where you might feel like you have given too much of yourself, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even spiritually. And if it can feel draining, it can feel like you're unappreciated, and that can be challenging, you know what I mean? Or maybe you on the other end of the spectrum where you set the unhealthy boundaries, which are basically keeping these large walls up. They're too high that even the people that love you can't even climb over them or break through them. They're like, super thick walls too. And then nobody that truly loves you can reach you. That, my friend, it's challenging as well. So this struggle, the tension between vulnerability and boundaries is I feel like it's something that some men, not every man, because I met wonderful men, I've been around wonderful men that don't struggle with these things, and I think that has been a perfect role model for me to be able to grow and develop, But for the men that do deal with these struggles, you know what I'm saying? At some point, the reason we might struggle with them is because we were told that you have to be strong. But what if strength is also meaning when to protect your peace? And I feel like as men, we have to hear that and I say like experience and seeing that other men can open, and it's okay to be able to open up, but at the same time, there's a line between vulnerability and being taken advantage of that you have to be mindful of, and that's what healthy boundaries help you set that to where you are protecting, like I mentioned earlier, your time, your emotions, and spiritual. Like I said earlier, I know I do a lot of research when it comes to adding to this episode. So, study shows that people with stronger boundaries experience less stress and healthier relationships. Um, you know, Yet so many of us either overextend ourselves, or isolate completely. And it's something that takes time to develop, but I hope us in this discussion can help lead to that start of being able to do that. I don't know if y'all knew, but I'm pretty sure most of y'all did. Even Jesus had boundaries. He walked with multitudes, what I'm saying? He fed everybody, he does his thing, but still withdrew to be alone with God. And he made it intentional, He made it intentional to spend time with God alone. And I'm sure his character and he was being replenished at the same time, because Jesus loved deeply, but he also knew when to say no. And that's another thing that I used to struggle with as a man. I felt that I had to say yes because I wanted to feel, accepted, what I'm saying? Especially when you're around certain individuals, community, So today that's what we're breaking down. I want to share light about why men struggle with boundaries and why I struggle with boundaries at some point too. How vulnerability plays a role in being strong. I said that wrong. Vulnerability plays a role of building strong relationships. That's what I meant to say. And what we can learn from God's design for balance in our lives. Even, I can't remember where I read it in the Bible, but I learned about Jesus having the boundaries. And then when I read that even God has particular boundaries for a particular heart of the wicked-hearted. There's boundaries that he does not tolerate. You know what I'm saying? And he will, look at the story of Saul. Like, he like, oh, you crossed the boundary, bro. I told you to do something. He like, I'm gonna leave you now. But anyways, this episode, it's about being able to learn to hopefully set healthy limits. It's about stepping into a life that honors both your emotions and your peace. So I'm looking forward to diving deeper into this, y'all. Y'all don't understand. This is something that I have been learning for the last several years, and it has made a very healthy version of myself. The version that you have right in front of you on this camera that still makes me nervous. Before we dive into solutions, let's talk about why this is challenging for men. I'm gonna give a few examples of why it can be challenging. The main one, as we know, why it can be a challenge for men is that vulnerability can be seen as a weakness. I've said that before. So when it comes to setting boundaries, it can be a struggle for men because I would say fear of disappointment, or let me rephrase that, fear of disappointing others. Many men say yes to everything because they don't want to let people down. I know because I used to be that way, especially in my early ages of life. I am 38 now, and in my early stages, I used to say, like probably in my 20s, I used to say yes to everything because I didn't want to let people down. I wanted to seem dependable. I wanted to seem supportive, and it took a toll on me, y'all. It really did. And I had to really learn to break from that. For other men, it might be pride and control. Some avoid vulnerability because they want to appear strong and in control. Just like I mentioned earlier, vulnerability can be seen as a weakness. But in this scenario, like I'm gonna say it again, it's a strength. It's a strength, and being used with proper, healthy boundaries is a great tool. So it can lead from guilt. It can lead from other issues. Guilt from setting limits. Saying no can sometimes feel selfish, but it's actually very healthy for us to be able to say no. Fear of rejection. Some people make rejection might keep people at a distance because they fear of being hurt or misunderstood. One key thing that I know is culture and family. If you weren't modeled that growing up as a young, growing up, and then you're taught as a man, the expectations as a man when you're growing up are to believe that their value is on how much strength they show, and also how much they sacrifice for others. But how are you expected to sacrifice for others if you can't replenish yourself and are drained all the time? Like, how you expect to be there for your family, be there for yourself, be there for your community, be there for your career if you can't take time to recharge? Think about Jesus for a second. He loved everyone, but he didn't let everyone have equal access to him. He had the crowd, he had the 12 disciples, and then he had the three, which is, I know Peter's one of them, James, and John. Correct me if I'm wrong, y'all. Please, I do not mind correction at all. I embrace it. So, but I think those are the three. And then he also had moments of solitude with God. And in those moments of solitude, he made it intentional. And I feel like we can look at Jesus and that can be used as a healthy model of boundaries. Jesus can show you how to be able to move in a crowd, how to move in, in your inner circle, and how to be able to spend time in solitude and recharge and replenish. Jesus, I feel shows you a good way of showing you who may have levels of access to you. So that's a good way to start, reading the scriptures, you know what I'm saying? Reading the Bible. The book of Psalms is so good. I really enjoy the book of Psalms. I like the book of Proverbs, but for me, the book of Psalms is very powerful. It's like heart and mind shifting power, like power in those words. I mean, the whole Bible is great, but that book of Psalms really spoke to me. Let me ask y'all this: have y'all ever felt like you give too much and get little in return? I know I have in the past. Like I said, I have those healthy boundaries now. So you know, or have you built walls so high and so thick? You know where I'm gonna go with it. That people that love you can't reach you. So, with all that being said, where do you think you fall on that spectrum? Take time to think about that. And if you want to write it down in your journal, do so. If you want to share it in the comments, do so as well. But where do you fall in that spectrum? You know, are you really someone that is open too much to the point that you get drained? Or are you somebody that's not open enough, that you have these huge walls? You probably have a castle around you, you know? And it pushes people away, or you allow too much access that you start developing resentment towards those people. I know from experience, because I used to open myself too much. So just think about that now. Now that we see why it can be a struggle for men. Sorry, y'all, my throat. Excuse me. Yeah, I already know. Yeah, I already know. Now that we see that it's a struggle for men, let's talk about why setting boundaries is actually one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. And also for your relationships. Let me clarify that. For yourself, your relationships, and most importantly, your mental health. And let's add even your spiritual life. You know, it's important to learn to set the proper healthy boundaries to just help you navigate this life as a man in this world. You know, in general, as anyone, because this can have an effect. Not having the proper boundaries or unhealthy boundaries can cause not only men, but many people to struggle with things, you know. So the power of healthy boundaries, y'all. I'm going to give you a few tips that I believe, or points, not tips, points on why healthy boundaries is powerful for healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries protect your energy. Okay? If you're constantly pouring into others, you'll run empty. Okay? Boundaries can strengthen relationships, because the reason I say that is because it gives clear expectations in that relationship that can lead to healthier interactions, you know. And I know that some people will say don't have expectations, but in certain relationships, there should be expectations that can help navigate that relationship with the proper boundaries, you know. Boundaries can also allow for, I would say, deeper vulnerability. You know, when you feel safe, when you're in the right crowd, in the right environment, with the right people, or the right individual, or the right mentor, you can be your true self. You know, even with God, you can be your true self. So, keep that in mind. Boundaries. I feel this one's good. Shoot, I'm trying not to look at my notes. Hold on. Okay. Boundaries reflect self-respect. Okay. When you value yourself, you value your time, you value your emotional well-being, and others will too, because they will be able to see it. They'll be able to see that and say, oh, okay, I understand. This person really values their time. If you want to throw finances on there, go ahead. But the time that shows self-respect and all those wonderful things. Like I mentioned earlier, even Jesus took time to withdraw from the multitude, withdraw from the crowd to go pray. I think it's in Luke 5:16. And I feel like he didn't feel guilty or taking time. Let me rephrase that. I feel like he didn't feel guilty on taking the time to recharge, because according to Jesus, he knew his mission. So it required, I feel like it required him to be able to recharge so he can continue to do the mission. So if Jesus needed rest and boundaries, why do we feel guilty for being able to set them ourselves? Think about that for a second. Why should we, if Jesus didn't, why should we feel like we can't set the boundaries? So it's time. It's time to give yourself permission to protect your peace. If setting boundaries makes it uncomfortable, I would say that you ask yourself, am I afraid of losing people? Is that the reason why you might be afraid to set boundaries? Or this one might get you. Or am I afraid of stepping into my true self? Because setting those boundaries is going to allow you to have that time to yourself. And then during that time in yourself, God will help see the true version of you, and he will help develop the true version of you, to reflect his character, his words, his glory. And that requires you to change. So when you spend time with yourself, that can be difficult to do. So ask yourself that. So I would say, so I'm pretty sure you're asking, how do we actually create these balances, between vulnerability and boundary? I'm gonna try to give you guys some tips, breakdowns into hopefully everyday use that you can apply, that can hopefully help you be able to find balance. in that sector. Oh, sorry, I don't know what I have in my throat. 1 second. I'm trying to clear it this whole time. All right. I'll probably have to edit that out. So yeah, back to what I was saying. The balance between vulnerability and boundaries. This is some tips that I think can help you start this. Number one is know your limits. Identify what drains you, and it's also good to identify what replenishes you. So that's one thing to consider. I would say two, learn to say no without guilt. You're not a bad person. Okay, you're not a bad person for saying no, because that no might help protect your time and energy. So it's important to be able to say no. I would say the third one can be to open up to the right people. Not everyone deserves full access to your emotions. I have learned that the hard way, because it was a part of my life where I was too open to everyone. But when you spend time with God, and if you're going through something, He will highlight the people that can possibly hear from you at the right time, at the right space. And they will, just like you pour into them, they will pour back into you. Fourth one, this is something that I enjoy doing. Create time for solitude. Okay, remember that even Jesus took time to go be with God. So it's okay for you to be able to spend time in solitude, away from community, not away from community. Let me rephrase this. It's okay to take time away from, whatever it might be, whatever you need to take away time from. It's okay to evaluate your relationships. If you set a boundary and that person chooses to not respect it or walk away from it, then I would say this, and this might hurt some people, that person's not meant to be in your life. If it's a healthy boundary that to just help navigate the relationship, it shouldn't cause issues or offense. You know what I'm saying? Because let's say you have a scenario like this. Let's say you have a friend who is constantly unloading her problems on you. Constantly. But they never take the time to check on how you're doing. That, I'm pretty sure there's somebody in this video watching right now, not in the video, but somebody watching right now that can relate to that. I've experienced it before. So setting your boundary might look like being able to, limit how often you engage in those conversations. Sorry, I was looking down on my timer. Or letting them know how you can always, not letting them know how you can't. Setting those boundaries can allow people to know how you're not always available all the time. And that isn't selfish. That's not selfish at all. It's just making sure that your emotional well-being isn't constantly being, I would say, accessed or drained. I would say probably drained It's the right word. Because that's important. You know what I'm saying? And you being able to say that you're not available all the time, it shouldn't be an issue if it's somebody that truly loves you, genuinely loves you, and genuinely is for you. You know. So I want to ask you guys a question or something to take time to reflect on real quick. I would say, who in your life are you allowing unlimited access to your emotions, time, and energy? Think about that for a second. And then also ask yourself, is that access being respected? Nah, I'm not here to try to shatter relationships of any kind. No, I'm not. That's not my goal. My goal is to show people how to build stronger relationships by being able to be vulnerable and at the same time setting healthy boundaries, because that's what it takes to cultivate those healthy relationships. I want I want to leave you with some final thoughts on why this matters and how to start implementing hopefully these things in your life. Because I believe it can help establish so many things when you learn the spaces where to be vulnerable, and and even in those spaces being able to set those healthy boundaries so you can build a deeper, stronger relationship wherever you with a friend, with your partner, if you're married, with your wife, or I should say your spouse, because you don't want to be that person that is either drained all the time or has a huge wall, and all of a sudden you're isolated from everything, So vulnerability without, once again, I'm gonna say it, vulnerability without boundaries leads to exhaustion. And then boundaries without vulnerability lead to isolation. Please remember that. The key balance, that's the key balance, I would say. So hopefully you can take what I've given you in this video one step this week, to whether it's opening up to someone you trust, or I would say setting a small boundary, and then a healthy one, of course, as well. It's always great to seek God's wisdom during something like this, because He will either A, highlight the community, B, the individual, or C, the place that you might have to go to, because he might show you, like, hey, I need you to go spend time with just me. Oh, this community will be great for you. This person is a great person that can, pour into you. So asking God for guidance will help you navigate this. Pray about where you need to be more open, and where you need to protect your peace. And God will highlight it. Okay, He will show it to you. So I'm so excited, for your vulnerability being used as a gift. Okay, but not only when shared in the right spaces, but also with the right people. Remember, boundaries don't make you weak. They do not. I'm gonna emphasize that again. Boundaries do not make you weak. Okay, they make you wise and strong. It builds strength as well. So hopefully we can commit to showing up fully in this version of ourselves by also protecting, our peace. Yeah, I think that's what I got for y'all so far. Please let me know if there's anything in this episode that you feel that you're gonna apply. Share it in the comments. I'll appreciate your feedback. If there's something that you feel that I need to change, share it in the comments. Let me know. I'm open to receive constructive criticism. I'm not the best at being in front of the camera, but I am glad that I'm able to pour out what God had placed in my heart to do. So I also challenge you, if this episode seems or was great to you, please send it to somebody that might need to hear it or watch it. I really appreciate it. Let's grow together and let's keep building from within. Love you guys. See you on the next episode. Please don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Also, there's a challenge. There's a QR code if you've seen on the video. Please scan it. It takes you to a surrender challenge that I made a digital version for free. And some people ask me about getting a hard copy. So there is a hard copy available. I just don't emphasize it on selling it, but I will provide that link as well. I try to set it at a price that was reasonable enough. Well, not reasonable enough. I try to set it to the lowest price I was able to on the Amazon website. So it's available on Amazon. 7 days of surrender challenge. So please check it out. And yeah, appreciate you guys. Till the next one. Peace.